Jeff Altgilbers. It's February 10th, and tonight is our Monday mentoring call. And if you're listening to this on the other side of the world, it's your Tuesday mentoring call. But it's a mentoring call. So we're so glad you're able to make it. And for you new people that have just joined us, just to let you know, I'm a Platinum International Diamond with 4Life Research, and I've been with the company for 15 years. It's been a wonderful experience, and that's exactly what I want to pass on to you, is experience. You know, there's something better than having to pay for it, and that is to listen to those who have been through it. And then you don't have to go through the struggles, in this case, of how you build your business. How do you become successful in network marketing? And if you're just learning about network marketing, well then, we want to continue to encourage you to become a student and understand this industry, because it has a great history. You know, we're, I guess, about 60 years now into this industry. It's evolved, it's changed, mostly because of technology, and then also in other ways. I can remember back when I first got introduced to network marketing, there wasn't a thing called a mentor. There was just basically your sponsor. You know, he'd sign you up and say, good luck. Hope you make it. And that would be about it. It's more to it than that today. And then, and that's one thing I love about International Mentors Team. What we do is what we want people to attract to us because they know we're mentors, that we're deeply interested in their welfare and their long-term success in 4Life Research. And we want to see that happen. I mean, you look at the greatest leaders in our company, then you'll see people that are very caring about others. They're interested in their success. They're sincere. They're genuine about it. They want to spend time with that person because they want that person to succeed. That's very important to them. And it's very important to me, and that's one reason why we created our system. We created our system because of the fact that, as some of you know, the back office in our website is educational. And education is very important because, as I've asked before to other leaders, when you sponsor someone with very little experience in this business, how long does it take for them to actually become a leader in their own right? And leader meaning that they have growth in their organization, they're leading their organization, their team, and, you know, they're a mentor to them. And the answer was 2 years, usually about 2 years, because when they come in, people just sort of fumble through this thing. Their vision's very foggy. They've never done anything like this before. They don't have any experience. Maybe the person that sponsored them didn't have any experience. That's often the case. And so it takes such a long time before they ever come out of the fog. Sometimes it's also the circumstances. Maybe they're caught up running a business, or they have a job, or they're, you know, going through a divorce, or they just fell in love. So there's a lot of distracting circumstances that can slow the process down, whatever that is. And it takes time. It takes time. Well, we believe that if you can collapse that time and get around that curve, or bell curve as they call it, then you can grow that leader quicker. And if you can grow leaders quicker, oh my gosh, you can create an army of mentors, you can create an army of leaders, you can create one heck of an organization. Well, that's exactly why we created the system, because the system has to be online. And people from any city, town in North America, South America, different parts of the world, they need to be able to access that system and enroll their people in it so they can get them around that learning curve very quickly. And that's why we have the ebook, Your Guide to Financial Freedom, in the back, because it talks about the 10 steps of duplication. So for you new people that have joined us, or for those of you that don't take recall like you should, and you forgot already the book, go read it again. Read the book. And then just remember, those points on how we build our business and what we do, and how we mentor people. See, that's the thing. And because that information is free and it's available immediately, I mean, when they sign up with you in For Life, the next thing you need to sign them up in is the system. And then you need to make sure, you being the mentor, that they get their photos up, get their bio up, help them with that so that they have their website up and running, and make sure you get them into that ebook. That's so important. And then they're on their way. Now, it's off to a start, and they're going to need your guidance. But that's mentoring. And that's why we created that system. And, of course, there's more to it than that. And you're on a call tonight, and this is a mentoring call. We also encourage books for you new people to read and educate yourself and become a student of leadership. And that's really the focus, isn't it, is developing. And that's something I wanted to start with. We talked a little bit last week. We talked last week about the greatest thing in For Life research. Do you remember what that was? Tick, tock, tick, tock. Do you remember that? The greatest thing in For Life research was not transfer factor. It was the you factor. Transferring you into others. You. It all starts with you. I can remember when I signed my application in For Life research, first day, faxed it in to Dave Daughtry. I didn't have anybody in my organization. I was, ground zero. I had nobody. I had to start with me. And that is, I had to believe in myself. And one thing we've got to learn is that when we start, we don't start with others. We start with ourselves. I had to work harder on myself than I did my leaders. And what I had to do was I had to understand that I had to win myself before I could win others. And what I meant by that mean by that is that I have to be totally sold that I have value to give to others before I can win others to me. So before I sold this opportunity, before I sold it to others, I had to sell myself. Or as I've said before, before people buy your opportunity, they buy you. I've heard it said in the past regarding products that before they buy your product, they got to buy you. No, I'm not selling products. I'm selling leadership. I'm selling a solution to their problems, which is For Life research using our system. But I'm selling me. And my friends, you mentors, you're selling you because you have a lot to offer. But the thing is, people come into this business, and beat up. I was beat up. I sure was. I didn't have a lot of confidence. Matter of fact, a lot of the companies I was in prior to For Life, they all left me. Several of the binary companies I worked. They used to call me the binary king. I was a king without a kingdom because the companies didn't last and the downlines fled. So I could have drawn the wrong conclusion that network marketing doesn't work. No, that's what a lot of people do. They'll never blame themselves and take personal responsibilities for poor decisions, and I've made a poor decision. So I had to learn I didn't have a lot of experience, so I had to learn how to pick them better. Maybe you girls might remember that when guys you dated in your early years, and some of you are still young. Should have picked a better one than that. Well, it's true with companies. So I developed a criteria, and that's what led me to For Life research. But I want to get back to the you, again, you, because the thing about it is, in this business, in order to win, you have to be happy, and you can't be happy unless you're healthy. And healthy is not the absence of sickness. And when we talk about being healthy, we're not talking about just physical. We're talking about emotional, and that's really where the heart of this lies, isn't it? Because you have to be emotionally dynamic or in balance. You have to be in balance emotionally to be successful. And so that's the thing, but to be emotional doesn't mean that it's, just being the absence of dysfunctional emotions. It's really just understanding what we have to offer people, that we have great value. And we have to find that in ourselves. Because you cannot give what you do not have. You cannot enjoy others until you enjoy yourself. And you get the best out of others when you give the best of yourself, who you are. But if the best you have isn't any better than maybe what others already possess, you'll never take them any higher than they've already been or where they are in life. So the bottom line is, if we're going to become a winner, we've got to win ourselves. We've got to look into ourselves. Keep in mind, everybody has anxieties. They have insecurities about themselves. I did. I can remember when before I got into For Life, I used to wonder, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I don't have the personality type. Heck, I'm not a salesman. I don't like sales. I don't want to ask anybody to buy anything. It's just not me. Well, that's right. And until even today, I wouldn't enjoy sales. I don't like sales. I don't want to ask anybody to buy anything. I simply like to show people something I'm excited about and let them make their own decisions. So the thing about it is, when we think about how to win in this business, how to become successful, it really comes down to one thing, and that is that we have to find our value. Again, we have anxieties, we have insecurities. But if you look at some of the greatest performers, and the Olympics they've talked about the Olympics. Maybe you saw some of it on television here in the last day or so. And some of these people get these multi-million-dollar endorsement deals and things like that. And people might define them in certain ways, about themselves, about how great they are. But really, what it really comes down to, it has nothing to do with their performance or their salary or their earning potential. It has to do with their value and whether or not they have owned it. And that's an interesting thought when you think about it. What it comes down to for you and me is whether we own it. And that means we have to embrace our own personal value and get secure with who we are. We have to get comfortable in our own skin. And when people can see that you're comfortable in your own skin, they're interested in you. It's really true. Because most people are not comfortable in their own skin because they haven't found their value. And so that's the thing. Let me give you an illustration about this. I remember it well years ago, and it had to do with a speaker one time. He was speaking before an audience, and he was bringing this very fact home. When he said, he held up a $50 bill, and he asked them, who would like this $50 bill? And all these hands started going up. And then he says, I'm going to give someone this $50 to one of you. He says, but let me do this first. And then he proceeded just to crumple up the bill in his hand, and he held up that crumpled up, wadded up $50 bill, and then he asked the same question. Who wants this? And the same hands went up in the air. They all still wanted that $50 bill. Well, he continued, what if I do this? And he dropped it on the ground and started to grind it in the floor, and he picked it back up. Not only was it crumpled this time, it was dirty. And now he said, now who wants it? And again, the same hands went up in the air. And then he said, you have all learned a valuable lesson. No matter what I do to the money, you still want it, because it doesn't decrease in value. It is still worth $50. Again, this underscores a profound point, that many of us in our lives, we're dropped, we're crumpled to the ground. We go through a lot of disappointments. Some of it is not by our choosing. Some of it is. But we go through these experiences, and there's times we may feel we're worthless and insignificant maybe in the eyes of others, but really what we have to realize is we will never lose our value as human beings. Nothing can take that away. We're still precious in God's eyes. Again, we're in His image, so it's not a mistake. We have tremendous value and potential. And so what we have to do is find that value, accept that value. And really, when you get to that point, you're really talking about self-acceptance. Self-acceptance. So the thing is, we have to look in and just see what our strengths are. We don't focus on our weaknesses. We need to focus on our strengths. For example, I would be a lousy piano player. Okay? I'm just not finger coordinated. So I'm not going to focus on that and try to make that better when that's just not me. That's not my skill. Now, if you get me on a drum set, I'm hand and foot coordinated, and I like drums. I can sit and just get into a groove and just enjoy it. On the other hand, my wife is very good on piano. She's very, very, finger coordinated and all that, but she gets on my drums and she gets so frustrated. I can't do. I said, why? It's so easy. It's so simple. Oh, okay. So that's the thing. We have to look and see where our strengths are, and improve on our strengths. I'm still trying to get better at drums. It can be also areas where we maybe have bad habits. Maybe I can remember working with a leader in India, and he would frustrate the heck out of me when I was in India. He would be scheduled maybe to have a meeting at 2:00, and we're in Mumbai, and the traffic, it can take 1 to 2 hours to get from one side of the city to the next. And I'd say, hey, got to be on time. Raj, be on time. He was never on time. Matter of fact, sometimes he was an hour, 2 hours late. Bad habit. It was no wonder he wasn't successful. I can think of another international diamond here in the U.S. He just had horrible people skills. It was a bad habit. The way he would speak to people and talk to people. It was a talk-down type of demeanor. I'd say, hey, Mike, you need to read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Oh, I read that book. He was one of those know-it-alls. Couldn't tell him anything. I said, Mike, I know you read the book. Could you read it again? And this time, could you apply it? Application's very important. It could be other things, When we see that we got some bad habits or maybe some attributes that we need to make an overhaul, that's a good thing. Because when you realize that, you're now in a position to change it. The sad thing is when you don't know it, you can't. So that's the thing. We have to look into our soul It reminds me of that scripture in James. I forgot where it is. James only 5 chapters, but he talks about a man looks in a mirror, then he goes away and forgets what sort of man he is. We don't want to be like that. We want to be able to look in that mirror and know exactly where we need to make improvements. And again, we're not talking about things we can't do. We're talking about things we can do. And that's all we should focus on, is where can we improve in these areas. The main thing is we don't want to get handicapped by these things, because it reminds me of like the elephants, the way they would train them in the circuses. They would maybe tie these heavy iron chains when they were young to their ankles, and then they would never go outside of a circle. Later, when they got older, all it had to be was a string. They would never break it, never leave it. We don't want to be like that. We don't want to submit to our weaknesses and say, this is all I am, this is all I can be. We have to believe in that value. And then what we have to do is look into those areas where we can make improvements and then increase it, accept it, and then we know we have something to offer people, especially as being a mentor. Last night I was watching a movie, and I'll let you guess it at the end. But it's an old movie, so you younger ones won't remember it, maybe. Maybe you will, who knows? But it's a story about an individual. His name is Chuck Webner. Maybe you've heard of Chuck Webner. But he was a boxer. And this guy had a bad habit of always using his head as a way of sort of blocking the other guy's punches, if you can believe it. Don't you normally use your hands for that? Well, he used his head. But he could take a pounding and he could also give somebody a real knockout blow when it came through. And he was rated as one of the gutsiest fighters ever. And in Salt Lake City, by the way, of all places, after he had a knockout with one of the fighters, he went 11 rounds with him, Don King offered Webner a title shot against the heavyweight champion George Foreman. But what was interesting is when Muhammad Ali defeated Foreman, Webner found himself scheduled to fight the greatest Muhammad Ali. And on the morning of the fight, Webner gave his wife a pink negligee and told her she would soon be sleeping with the heavyweight champion of the world. Well, what was interesting about that fight was that Muhammad Ali scored a technical knockout. It was just a technical. It was not a knockout. With just 19 seconds remaining in the fight. Just 19 seconds. But it was just like a moment. It was just like a moment in that 9th round, though, that Chuck Webner, did a hammer, like a ham-like paw, I guess, to Ali's chest and knocked him off his feet to the ground. He thought that when he did that, the fight was over. Of course, Muhammad Ali got up, and because of that technical knockout, he won. But the interesting thing, what I thought was funny, was Webner's wife said to him, she pulled out that negligee and she said, "Do I go to Ali's room tonight or does he go to mine?" But the thing about it is, there was something interesting that came out of that story. And I'll say something more about Webner in the end here. But what came interesting to me out of that story, and this had to do with the movie I was watching last night, that there was a young, struggling writer in that audience. A young, struggling writer, and some of you might have guessed who he was. Yes, that's right. It was Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone was so inspired by what he saw that man do. The fact that he knocked down the heavyweight champion of the world. I mean, knocked him down. I mean, right? It was incredible. the score that he made on him. But Sylvester Stallone went home, and for 3 days and 3 nights, he wrote the book Rocky, which was based on a movie. They did a movie on Rocky, and was based on James Lipton. And what was interesting is that the book was a success, and then Sylvester Stallone was offered $400,000 for his script, for the movie. He refused it. He told them, I want to act in this movie. They said, well, we don't want you to act in it because you're not an actor. And he was like, yeah, but I know the character, and I know how to act him out. Well, the result was that instead of taking the $400,000, Stallone accepted $20,000 and the right, to play in that movie, and he accepted a salary for that movie of $340 a week. Can you believe that? $340 a week. Well, let me ask you, Sylvester Stallone's successful today? Here's a guy that was broke, came out of nowhere, but Stallone knew his value. He knew he had something to offer. Now back to Webner. What was interesting, the movie was based on his life, right? So Webner was offered $70,000 or 1% of the movie's gross profits. Which do you think he chose, my friend? That's right. If you're thinking he chose the 1%, I think I would have done that. I think you would have done that. Nope. Webner, who this book and this movie was based on, Rocky, he accepted $70,000. He wanted a guaranteed payday. And that decision ultimately cost him $8 million. That's right. $8 million. The same thing happens whenever you sell yourself short. And that's the thing that we want to take from this. You've got to be sold on you. And who you are is the greatest asset you'll ever possess. And when we talk about the you factor, that's the greatest thing for life. It's the truth. You've got to find your values. And don't worry about any failures. Remember that illustration about the $50 bill. No matter how many times it's thrown down to the ground, stomped on, crumpled up, still worth $50, my friend. And so no matter what has happened to you, you still have incredible value. That is one of the reasons why people fail so much in this business, is that they bring emotional baggage into 4Life. And I can remember when I started, and some of the leaders started with me, I used to say, leave your emotional baggage out. I want you to come into this and believe and convince yourself this is the first time you've ever signed up in this kind of a business, this business called network marketing. I want you to come in with a fresh attitude that you're going to succeed. Nothing's going to stop you, and that this business has tremendous value to people. People need this. They're hurting financially. And look how simple it is. Look how simple. Enroll 6 people who do 2 bottles. Teach them to do the same. Go 4 levels deep. You're making $18,000 plus a month. Hopefully you can live on $18,000. At least for a while. You can increase it. Hope you do. But we're only talking about enrolling 6 that consume or move 2 bottles a month, and they teach their people to do the same. Just do that 4 times. Duplicate that 4 times. Boom, you're there. Now, how hard is that? That is a walk in the park. Well, when we have a winning attitude like that, people buy it. When we approach them and say, hey, I got in something. Maybe it's for you. Maybe it's not. That's not a winning approach. And I promise you, they're not. So that's the thing. We've got to come to terms with ourselves And then we've got to find that value. And remember that illustration about the $50 bill. And also remember about the guy who sold himself short. That great fighter who you probably never heard of, or I never heard of until I read the story. But everybody knows about Sylvester Stallone. Everybody knows about Rocky. Well, so that's our mentoring call tonight. I want to thank all of you for joining. And this week begins a week. So, what shall you do with this week? And who will you go out to present yourself? You notice I didn't say for life. To present yourself to. And show them how their life can change with For Life Research and with our system that's free. They get it for free if they just enroll with you, the great mentor that you are. I hope you really do that. I want to also encourage, I have one of our leaders, Antonio, outside of Portugal. He goes on one of those islands out there. He started doing his own conference calls, his own international mentor teams conference calls in Portuguese. That's great. I'm glad you're doing that, Tony, because I don't speak Portuguese. I don't speak Spanish. But I wish I did. But I encourage all you leaders, anytime you can utilize, if you're in North America, you can utilize this conference call network here, freeconferencing.com. freeconferencing.com. And it's good to pull your team together and to prepare materials, share things, talk about things. The thing that you have to remember is you are the leader. You're the one that sets the speed for your team. And again, they can go no farther than you have been. So grow, my friend. Grow and fly. Become a student. Grow yourself. Grow your values. I wish you all the success. I really do. And now I'm going to stop the recording. And for those of you who are on the call, or any screaming kids, it is your chance to voice yourself. Okay, thanks again for being on the call.